The times in which we live are called the present. It's easy to see the present. We have only to look around us. The past is all around us, too, if we know how to look for it. Sometimes we stumble upon the past, even when we aren't looking for it. Of course, it isn't every day that we unearth a relic of the days when Indians hunted here. But when we look at our modern world through the eyes of history, we can see much of our inheritance from the past. For instance, looking at a modern steel axe, we can see in it an early Indian stone axe, typical of those from which our modern axe developed. In the same way, we can see our inheritance in other modern things. Money, for example, which had its origin in beads and salt and metal rods and other articles thousands of years. We can see our inheritance in a watch, developed from the ancient sundials as a method of recording the passage of time. Yes, we can see our inheritances all around us, in the country, in the city. When we look through the eyes of history, we can see the many contributions of the past to our modern life. For our world today is a mixture of the achievements of many nations of many ages, achievements which had their origins in ancient Egypt, in Palestine and Mesopotamia, in Greece and in Rome, in India and in China, in Western Europe and in the British Isles, and in the customs and practices of the Indians who originally lived in North America. Our debt to the past is a debt to past achievements of men who lived all over the world. To understand this inheritance and to know how to recognize it, let's look for it in this modern farm. Take this cultivator. Its history begins 5,000 years ago. That's when the plow was invented in Egypt. Men began to cultivate the soil, sow crops, and harvest them. By medieval times, men had learned to rotate crops to maintain the fertility of soil. Direct fertilization of crops was practiced by the North American Indians 400 years ago. All these skills of farming were practiced by hand until very recent years. Now machinery is used to do the same things: haying, cultivating, fertilizing. And today, as in this rice paddy, even the airplane is used to do the work of planting. Thus, agriculture, beginning in Egypt 5,000 years ago, spreading through the ancient world, added to in the medieval Europe of 1,000 years ago, refined and developed, added to by the American Indians, such is the history of but one of our inheritances. Look again. Now can you see in the present some of our inheritances from the past? You can find such inheritances wherever you look. This highway, what do you see? Just a modern road? Look again through the eyes of history. All roads lead to Rome. 2,000 years ago, the Romans turned trails into roads, and roads into a great system. Hard-surfaced roads built to last, many of them still in use today. But more important yet is the knowledge of road construction discovered by the Romans. Modern road-building machinery is new, but behind it lie knowledge and skills developed through the centuries. As you watch this activity, can you see the road builders of ancient Rome? else can we see the past mingled with the present? What about this truck? Let's look at just one element, the wheel. Many thousand years ago, before the plow, men saw in a rolling log the principle of the wheel. When men learned to make a wheel and mount it on an axle, modern transportation began. From this ancient starting point, the use of the wheel developed through the contributions of many men of many nations. Better and better vehicles were mounted on better wheels. Wheels to set our vehicles in motion. Wheels to transfer motion from one axle to another in machines great and small, and from one machine to another. The wheel is an important working part of almost every machine in use today. Again, we see a better present built on the contributions of the past. Yes, the present is rich with inheritances from the past. To see them, we must look with interest and with knowledge. Knowledge itself is an inheritance from the past. Knowledge comes to us through the wisdom we take from other persons who are living or who have lived. Knowledge today is passed on from one to another, much as wise men thousands of years ago gave knowledge to the children of their tribes. And as in ancient Greece, when philosophy reached great heights in the teachings of Socrates and Plato and Aristotle. In our first universities, founded in the Middle Ages, and in our modern classes and schools, knowledge is still given by word of mouth. Over this same period of time, another method of transmitting knowledge developed. When we look at someone writing, we can see our inheritance from medieval times, when men inscribed the wisdom of the past for the people of the present and future. And we can see further our inheritance from Egyptian hieroglyphics and other ancient writing, such as cuneiform. Printing had its beginnings in ancient China. Then, as printing presses were developed and improved, knowledge was made available to all people who could read intelligently. So it is that today the wisdom of yesterday is open to all of us. Once more, let's look about and see the past mingling with the present. Sometimes it isn't easy to see the contributions of the past. Where can we see them in this modern building? We must look through the eyes of history. Look for the post and lintel that came from ancient Egypt. Look for the Greek concept of form and symmetry. Look for the arches and vaults used by the Romans 2,000 years ago. Look for building materials that have come from science and research that began in the Middle Ages and continues today. And look for mathematics and mathematical expressions. This came to us from the Hindu people, through the Arabians who carried it across North Africa, into Spain and Europe, where it was adopted by the Western world. Yes, all this and more lies behind a modern building. You can find it if you look with interest and knowledge. Wherever you look at the present, you can see the past. In this church, you can see a great religious tradition and way of life. In modern commerce, you can find customs and systems of trade more than 2,000 years old. In the city itself, you can see patterns of living that have been developing for centuries, from the times of nomadic tribes and people. Yes, in the city and in the country, you can find parts of our inheritance from the past. What we do with it, what we add to it, will be important to the future. For remember, future generations will count our contributions in their inheritance from the past.